Hello, and today I'm going to be taking us through the EES Data, Mechanical Estimating and PDF Takeoff. Just before we get started by creating a job, I just want to take us up here into our new support button, which has lots of new helpful articles, sort of how-to guides on how to use the system and just a helpful few tips and tricks, as well as our new homepage here, which will of course give you all of our contact information, as well as the ability to submit tickets and make any suggestions directly to us. So to get started on creating a job, we just want to come down here to the new button and give that a press, and this is going to take us to our first stage out of the 6 to be able to actually create and produce our quotation. So the first thing we're going to want to fill in is the job header information here. So I'm going to start off by inputting a job code. Now this is actually the only thing that is mandatory and required. We can always come back and fill all the information in later. But the job codes are one-time codes for this particular quotation. If you would like to assign it a more of a reference code that relates to a couple of different quotations or a particular client, feel free to use the parent code. Now the parent code will only be used for internal reference. Job name, we're just going to simply import what the job's called. Okay, and then what we can do is come down here and select a client from our database. So what we're able to do is able to add in any new customers at any given point, and which will then just be able to be logged here in this menu. So you can always come back and then choose the client if you need to do another quotation for them again. You also have a nice helpful feature, which is this tender submission date. So you can give that a press and then say when the job actually needs to be submitted by. The purpose of this is actually to change the color on the amend job menu, because you can preset all your different colors and what time they change. Usually something like a traffic light system of green you're fine, orange it's getting close, and red it needs to be submitted. So now that we've finished here on this job header information, we can come down here to the labor portion. So what you have the ability to do is preset any of your wanted labor rates, and then you're always able to come in here and make any adjustments, whether that would be for future use or whether that would just be for this quotation. That might literally just depend on this tick box down here. We also have the ability to add in travel distances. So what we can do is we can actually make an allowance for the cost per mile, as well as actually being able to allow for lodge and actually putting in the start point of lodge. So this is the table where once it's filled in once, you'll always be able to just come up here into the travel distance and say how many miles away it actually is, and the software is going to do everything else for you. A very sort of similar thing with the daily additional cost. So if you wanted to allow X amount for parking, toll booth, congestions, anything along those lines, from the software's calculated labor time, that's going to go back into the amount of days that's needed and then allocate this accordingly. Once again, it's going to do this all automatically for you as you work through the job. You also have the ability to apply site difficulty factors if it's a particularly awkward job that you're working on, but you also have the ability to only apply this to certain sections, which I'll be able to get onto a bit more on the second stage, on the takeoff, which is the same sort of thing with being able to sort of say I'm only supplying the materials or I'm only installing the materials. There is also some finer tuning options down here for the particular quotation, but we won't necessarily get into too much of that today. So now what we're going to want to do is press continue to move us forward to the second stage, the takeoff screen. Now the takeoff screen here is actually broken up into 3 different areas. You effectively have your item section over here on the left hand side in this grey area here, your sectional structure here in the middle, and what we call the go to examine grid over here on the right, which is going to show us all of the individual items placed inside each various different section. So the bit that we're probably going to want to focus on first would be the sectional structure here. This is effectively the breakdown that we will be creating for the individual different types of reports or quotations that you will be generating for your client. So whether you actually have to construct the job in their particular order or whether you actually get the ability to do it yourself, you should be able to satisfy all. So just as an example purpose, I will make us a couple of different sections here. What I'm going to do is show us it with different locations and different services applied. So for example, I can have the ground floor, And then what I want to apply to the ground floor is I want to apply different subsections to it. So I'm going to go B and then press plus. And then what I'm able to now do is add in my various different sections. So I can add in my low temperature hot water, my CWS, and if I can just keep going with this. So this is an A level section and these are B level sections. We do have the ability to actually take it further down to C's and then again to D level sections, but hopefully most of the time A's and B's should be all that you'd need. So now if I wanted to create this for the next floor, I could go A plus first floor, B plus LTHW and B plus again for the CWS. Or alternatively, just to speed things up a little bit, I can come up to the ground floor here, right click it and simply press the duplicate button, which will create me an identical copy of this section structure here, and all I have to do now is rename the folder to the next floor. Just like that. And then what I can do is I can right click this and press keep globally expanded to make sure this constantly stays open rather than closing and folding. Of course you can do that as you wish when working through the system if that's going to make anything any easier. So effectively after we've made our different section structures we've got two options. If we've already got all of the quantities in which we need, we can simply come onto here and start selecting the different items from our database to input them in. Or alternatively, if we do have the PDF takeoff drawing to work on, instead what we can do is we can switch over to that software, load the PDF drawing in, and then start to take off the quantities live on that software with using the same database options here on the left, and then automatically bring them over into this system using the import PDF button. So I'm going to give us a little example of both of those today. So I'm going to show us how we can actually input the various different items manually ourselves whilst actually in the quotation, and then we can move across onto the PDF takeoff to get that all covered. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to come down here to the section that I want to be working in, and then what I'm going to want to do is choose something from out of my database. Now the primary best way of actually searching through the database would be these these 8 categories here. So now I'm just going to go into my tube and fittings, which will then allow me to come through here and see our large list of manufacturers. So what I'm going to be able to do here is actually pick specifically what I need. In this instance I'm going to use copper tube, and there's only one option available in the main index, which is copper tube, and now we can see the further breakdown of the different various options that we have here. What I'm going to go for is just the standard table X, so I'm going to give this a press, and now we have the multiple different options all set up here. So what we do have live on screen though is the item's description, its product code, as well as an installation time, as well as what my current net rate is with this discount over here applied to it. The discounts, we do have the ability to apply them individually to each product, or more so what I've got here is you have the ability to apply one discount across the entire range. Now what I actually want to do if I just need to actually input this information in, all I have to do is come to the quantity box and then simply input how many meters of this that I would need. So I'm going to say that I need 50 meters of 15 mil, and then I'm going to need 20 meters of 22, and then simply just press the confirm button. Now that's going to input all that information live on screen for us inside the ground floor CWS folder so we can see it. And then what we can do here is now see the complete breakdown and how much that is going to cost us so far. And if we wanted to bring that down here to the bottom, you can actually see the total accumulated cost so far. So we have our total amount of hours needed, as well as our total labor cost against our hourly rate, which we set up minutes ago, as well as the grand total of what our material cost should be. Now effectively what we have to do is to keep on working with this and going and finding the relative different items. So now I can go down to tube and fittings. Now if this was some soldered fittings for example, I can just scroll all the way down to Pegler here and go inside Pegler Yorkshire into here, and now I can actually come in here and then input the relevant different couplings and bends that I would need. So just for example, whilst we're going through here, I will have 15 of these and 7 of these, and simply just press the confirm button yet again. And once again we can see that we're just slowly and slowly building up this quotation live on the screen. So what to do if you can't necessarily find the item in which you're looking for within our 8 categories here? We'd recommend that you use the advanced search button here or your search bar up here on the top right, which you are also able to access once you are inside the advanced search screen, just here, which actually does allow you to search for individual product codes, which is the same for the search box up here as well. So once you're in here, you can actually see a complete breakdown of every manufacturer in which we have on the database to go through and actually find the relative different items it is that you are looking for. So for example here, I can come into the crane valves and see the complete breakdown of that, and then the individual breakdown of the ranges of which I'm looking at. So I'm just going to come here and grab this 15 here and import 1. Now what the system is actually going to do for us is it will actually flag up anything that has a 0 value in, whether that will be the quantity, the unit labour hour, the unit material cost, or in my particular instance, the discount. And it will always highlight these in this yellow colour for you, just so you can physically see where it is, and it will also tell you on the section structure. We can either deal with this live on the screen now, or we can simply wait until we get to the third stage, the unpriced items, which is effectively the warning triangle page, where you are actually able to tackle all of these issues at once. But considering it's just the one it's live on the screen, if you do know what your discount would be for this product straight away, you can simply just input the discount. Do always remember to input your minus figure though when inputting your own discounts. Now, when you actually input your own discount, the system will always ask you this, as long as you are inside a quotation. Would you like to save this just for this particular job, or would you like the ability to save this to your master discount table to be used on all future projects? So I'm going to save it to the master discount table and simply press confirm. And there we are, and that then just adjusted the unit material cost live on screen. There, it did do it pretty quickly. Now, if there is any other items that you can't find on the database because it's not particularly on there, or you simply don't have the time to look, you do have the ability of inputting your own items into the system as well. You have 2 ways of doing this. One would be contractor's choice up here, and the other would be the non-standard option down here. Now, they are both effectively the same thing. They are a manually inputted item where you would input all of the information. The only difference effectively between the two of them is non-standard is for one-off input items. So you select non-standard, you relate it to one of our material options over here. So for example, if I needed a particular valve again, I could just come onto 2 valves and fittings, press confirm, and now I can manually type in the particular valve that I would need. Now you can also include product codes if that is necessary as well. And then I can apply my different labour times. Now I'm going to use one of the standard ones off of the system at 0.3 because in my particular instance I'm saying it's a very similar check valve, and then I can simply just import whatever the cost of this that it would be. Now this would be for a one-off item, so this would mean that I would not necessarily need this item again. If I go to the non-standard and repeat the process, you can see it's cleared itself down ready for the next one-off input. If I did actually want this item to be available for me later on in this quotation, or even in another quotation, I would have been better off using the contractor's choice instead, as this one does give you the ability to add in your own main index and sub-index, very much the same as like how we've created our database, to actually store any particular items in which you'd like, where you can actually just write in all of the description, all exactly the same as the free type, but this will actually stay here in the database for you to use again. Now, one other type of manual input that you might want to do for yourself is actually input a quotation. So whether that would be from a subcontractor or whether it's just an actual quotation from a large amount of items. What you'd want to use instead of non-standard or contractor's choice would be the Subcon Special button here. So if I just add in another section for AC, for example, because this is going to be carried out by a subcontractor, I can click on Subcon Specials, which gives me an entire new list of categories that are going to be available on the markup. So this is going to keep them away from all of the standard 8 materials, which non-standard and contractor's choice are related to. So I can simply input air conditioning in here, and then I can put in my AC sort of quotation. So I'm just going to put AC and then put in a particular quote number. and then I'm going to say there's one lot of this which requires 8 hours of supervision, and then they have quoted me £8,000. And I simply input that in there, and that will show up as a purple colour and actually say Subcon Special here, so you can physically see the difference between it. Now what I did was allow some hours for supervision rather than hours for this to be carried out. If you do need to allow just a lump sum of labour time, whether that would be for strip out, supervision or anything along those lines, simply go to your non-standard button and you'll be able to get to the labour only option, or as a quicker option you do have just the labour only button here, which takes you to the exact same place, and you fill out the information in the same way that you would do with all of the other manual entries. There's also a couple of other things, such as being able to apply comment lines onto particular quotations as well. One thing I did briefly mention previously on the job header screen was the ability to alter your site factor, but on a per section basis, which is actually just done up here on this site factor button. So for example, if this is 20 feet up in the air, so it's going to take twice as long to do all of the installation, I can set the site factor to 2, doubling the install time in this particular section, but not actually affecting it in any of the others. That's actually a very similar thing to the button next to it, which is the multiply button. So there's actually a section quantity. So this isn't the particular suitable type of layout for this, but if I had any sort of room types, flat types, apartment types, anything along those lines, and I wanted to say that there is multiple versions of this, I can simply just quote one of them and then say how many of them there are up here on the multiplier, which will actually affect it live on your section structure, as you can see there. Now the ability to actually turn the section off for supply and installation, if you do want that ability, that's just done here on the right click, which you can see here both materials and labour are turned on. Simply turn the relevant ones off if you would actually like them to, if you wanted to use any of this functionality. Now that does give you the base understanding of how to use the estimating software to actually input your different items, other than the Assemblies button. Now the Assemblies button, just quickly before we move on to the PDF takeoff, is actually a much faster and better way of inputting the items. So what this effectively is, I've made one here just as an example for us, is putting in multiple different items that are all linked together with the various different quantities set up to make the inputting in faster. So what I've got here is a piece of copper tube with the coupling, as well as being able, as allowing for a hanger at 1.2 meters. So what I could do instead of using this particular line here, which is just the copper tube, if I simply highlight this line and say I'd like to replace it, yes I'm sure, and instead I'm going to input my assembly. So we're going to be able to notice a big labour time difference between this. So I'm going to press confirm on here, and then we need to input 20 meters. So as what you can see here, apparently that is only going to take 0.3 of an hour, where my assembly with all the multiple different items will actually take 0.6 hours per meter. So now I can press confirm, and that will actually input those multiple other different items for me. So the copper tube is there, and the rest of the items have actually just appeared down here to give us the multiple different couplings, rings, rod, channel, and the actual nuts of what we need as well. So this is actually what we're going to get on in the PDF takeoff a little bit, is using these assemblies for faster inputting. So now if we actually want to switch over onto the PDF takeoff, we can actually get started here. Okay then, so to get started on the PDF takeoff, first thing we're going to want to do is actually upload that drawing onto the cloud system. So we're going to want to start that by hitting our little blue Browse Cloud Documents button here, which will open up your cloud storage. So we're going to want to come in here to our drawing folder, in which we can copy and paste any documents which we have, wherever that might be on your computer. You can copy or cut and paste that directly into the folder just here. Now if you do have Dropbox or OneDrive set up, we can actually give you direct access into that, so you don't need to do the minimize stage. But other than that, once it's uploaded onto there, it's very easy to then go on to the next stage, which simply you just press your yellow open button. That's automatically going to default into this drawing folder, where you will be able to find the PDFs that you uploaded, or if it was a folder or a couple of PDFs, that's also fine. You just have to open them up one at a time. So once you've actually got the drawing on the screen, like we have here, to actually start to navigate around, you can use, of course, your navigation bars on the sides. You can use your left click to hold yourself down to move around whilst you're not plotting any items. Or alternatively, you can push and hold your wheel in and drag that around as well. To zoom in and out of the system, simply roll the wheel towards yourself to zoom out, and then towards the monitor to zoom in. Now it always zooms in wherever the mouse is pointing, so you don't actually need to zoom in very much. Alternatively, of course, you have got your magnifying buttons up here that you can alternatively use just to zoom you in and out exactly in the same way. And along the top, you've also got a bunch of other different tools. If you actually hover over any of them, they will tell you what they all actually do. The entire second row here is exactly the same as the entire left hand side in the estimating. It's all exactly the same options in the same order, just going across rather than down. And then what we've got over here is we've got a settings and we've got a layers tab. If layers are applicable to the particular drawing you're in, you will have the ability to turn them on and off. So the first thing we're actually going to want to do once we've got the drawing live on our screen is actually go through and set our scale. Now we do of course have the ability to set custom scales if we find that scales are wrong. So what we're going to do is go down and have a little look at the ledger, which is 1 to 100 at A1. Now we do agree that it is an A1 size piece of paper, which should mean that the scale is correct. So if I grab the ruler tool and just left click it, set 1 to 100 and then select the ruler tool, there we go, and I will left click at the start point and then left click at the end point, and it tells me what the distance is. Now I'm happy that that scale is correct, but if you were not, you'd simply come down here to custom scale, click on this little box here with the 3 dots in, and repeat the process of what I've just done. But this time we would say what the scale of the what the distance should be between the start point and the end point of what we've done, and from that it will then create as a scale which we can then safely either round up or round down depending which way it needs to be. So now that we've actually got that set up and we've got the scale correct and we know how to move around on the drawing, what we're going to want to do is find where we're going to want to start on the drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to this drop, and then what we're going to want to do is pick which color we want and say what it is that we're actually going to be doing. So I'm going to say we are dealing with the low temperature hot water. Then what I have to do is actually just simply go into the database and then choose the item in which I'd need and then start the process. So what I'm going to do now is go for the BSS steel tube, which, excuse me for a second, there it is, sorry, I'm being blind. Steel tube, come onto here, and then I'm going to choose the galv, medium weight, screwed and socketed. And then what I'm going to need straight away is some 32 mil, so I'll grab that from here, and then I'm just going to do that little bit of a run. So left click, left click, left click, and finalize that with a right click. And because I do have 2 little drops here, what I'm going to do is just quickly do a little line there so I know I've been there, change the value to a suitable riser length in my particular instance. I'm going to do it again here, but this looks to be a bit more of a set. So I'm going to do another line across, but then change that to 1.5. So now that that bit is complete, if I wanted to carry on doing my run of the multiple different pipe lengths, all I would have to do is simply go onto my database, navigate to the same place of where we were because it doesn't remember where we've been last, and then simply come on here and select the next available size in which we'd need, and then simply work our way down the drawing. So left click, and then finalize that with a right click. So obviously you are starting to get the gist of this, of how you actually start to move down on the drawing. Once you've actually gone through and done your multiple different pipe lengths, which obviously we can see it's loading them all up down here. I'm just going to do this last 15 mil up here for us. Go onto there, grab the 15 mil, and then I'm just going to do these last little bits here. There we go. Now what I want to do is actually allow for the multiple different bends and tees that have been along the way. So I'm going to go to the database option, and then what I'm going to want to do in this particular is go find those tees. So I'm going to come to my steel fittings, mild steel, and then the fact of I want the tees. Now we do have multiple different sets of tees that are all set up in here. If that's not the correct one, simply just come back, go back into the menu, and then you will be able to then navigate through the database again to try and find the relevant item it is in which you'd need. I am just going to pick this item for the sake of what we're doing, I'm just going to come down here and get a 20 by 15. We need that particular instance. We have one of those here, and for the sake of it, I'm just going to drop one in there so you can see the purpose of what we're doing. You then proceed to go back in, find the bends, and then proceed to work on all the multiple different other items, such as the radiators, valve sets, or anything like that. Now, if we had set up some of our assemblies to be a bit more suitable for what we were doing, we could have used these. So if we had a steel, very much like how I've got the copper tube including hanger, if you needed steel tube to be included in the hanger and to do the exact same thing, then you just make that as an alternative option of yourself. I did mention, of course, you could set up radiator valve sets, so this would just be default of the multiple different items in which you'd need for that. And then you could obviously then go around and pick on the multiple different equipment in which you'd need afterwards, in the same way that we'd put down NET or the bends or anything along the lines of that. So that's all really easy to start actually going on there and working through the multiple different items in which you would need. So once you've actually finished this, and you want to actually move on to the next stage and actually read all of this back into the estimating, of course you can see it's really easy to do so. All you have to do is make sure you've got both softwares open like we have. Press the export to estimating button, which of course will come up with your job name, so that should all be correct. Press the confirm button, and when you do, you'll see that these will tell you that they've been exported. So that's now telling you it's all been successfully sent over to the estimating. So all we do is navigate back to the estimating now and press the import PDF button, which will then show us our different service. We then say where we'd like that to be applied for in our particular quote, and then you simply press your import button, and that's then going to bring across all the multiple different items in which we would need and actually add up the different quantities for us. Once again, we can see the total accumulation of all the multiple different labour times, as well as being able to see the total down there. So that would then move this across. If we did miss anything off, we could safely just take it off live on screen or do the next service or the next part of the drawing and then proceed to do the same thing again, as these tick boxes will stop these previously exported items from being able to be exported into the estimating again. So once you've finished this drawing, please make sure you press your save icon. Then you can just come up here and then you can save your version of the drawing that is complete. And then if you actually did need to move that back over to your side, simply open up your Cloud Documents button again, go into your drawings, and then simply copy and paste the completed version back onto your own side. Or if you'd like all this information in an Excel document, simply just press your Excel export, which will also just follow the same suit of save it in your cloud storage and then copy and paste it back to your desktop. So once you've actually gone through and you've done all these multiple different things and you've actually allowed for all your multiple different sections within the system, I'm just going to go through and delete these other sections here just to complete the just so we have a free full complete sections. Once we've actually gone through and completed everything in which we would need, all we would simply have to do is press the continue button. If we did have any of those warning triangles on the page, like I said previously, it would actually stop at step 3. However, in this particular instance we don't, so it's going to skip us straight on to step 4, which will be the calculate screen, where it's going to calculate now everything using obviously the current trade prices with your discounts and our industry standard labour times. And that's going to now calculate that all through for us and actually give us, if we look up here, the complete individual breakdown for each of the relevant different material types, our subcontractor, and the site labour based off of our total accumulation of our labour hours, as you can see down here. Now, one thing that's absolutely brilliant about the system is if you actually need to come back to this job at a later date. So I've took us back to the calculate screen now, which is a little bit different because we've been through it the first time round. So this will come up whether you come to it a minute later or a year later. It doesn't particularly matter. You will always be presented with these 4 same options. We have the ability of holding the material prices, the retain, the manual update where we can pick and choose what we'd like to be affected by the price update, or you have the automatic update if you simply would like to revitalise the entire quotation up to the most current trade prices. And then of course you have exit if you don't actually wish to do any of the calculation changes at all. If you are going back to an existing quotation to do one of these recalculate options, we would advise that you copy the job first and then only recalculate the copied version, just so you've always got a bit of a backup. So just to move us back onto the summary table then, this is actually where we can come on and do all of our multiple different bits of markup. Effectively what we're going to want to do is look up here first and then follow this all the way down the screen up to this total, which gets totaled up down here, which then gets moved down to overhead, profit, builder's discount and the others, and eventually gets to the gross contract cost. Now of course there is multiple ways of using this screen. You could for example use the on cost percentage up here and mark up each of these individual materials types as well as the labour with their own individual on cost percentages, which is simple just by clicking in there and then typing in what percentages you would like it to be, like so, and it will actually show you what values that's adding on as well here and affect into the total. Or alternatively, if you did just want to mark up the job as a whole, whether you just want to do the overhead and the profit, then you'd want to do that down here, which is affecting more of this total figure, as we'll see that it will appear in the general overhead and profit boxes below. There you go. So there is multiple different ways you can use this. Those two options aren't even the only way in which you can use this if you want to. If that's something you'd like to discuss in a bit more detail, just ring our support line and we'll happily all go through that together. If you do want to apply builder's discount onto the job, it's quite easy. It's there, and all you have to do is put in the fact if you need 1/39th of the job, and that will allow the correct amount for you, and then simply remove that again when you need to quote unquote apply that builder's discount. Now that's going to get us all the way down to this net contract cost, which then leads us to the two final things, the prelims and the prime costs and provisional sums. Now both of these two things are accessed through this tab up here at the top. So where you have the ability to input any prime costs, provisional sums or contingencies, simply overtype the description and drop your amount in, and it will only show the relevant ones which actually have amounts applied to them. Following that exact same sort of structure is the preliminaries. So we have actually a bunch of default descriptions set out for you, and we actually allow you to put in your prelims within 3 different ways. So you can pick and mix between all of it. You can use our descriptions, or you can simply overtype the descriptions if you'd like, and you just input your values in. Then one thing with prelims is it's actually going to default automatically to spread or hide the prelims for you and hide that within all of your rates. If you do need to actually show that to your client, simply untick that and the prelims will be shown as a separate cost on the end quotation. Now that would actually bring you all the way to your gross contract cost, and which would leave us with the final 2 steps, which would effectively be in producing your own internal documents, whether that would be to get quotations from wholesalers or procurement, or if you'd like to see a bit more of a comprehensive breakdown of your job. All of those can be accessed in here, this select reports button just here. So if I bring this up, we have a multiple different options. Let me just show you an example of a material report that you could send over to a wholesaler. So this is material summary unpriced, and I just want to preview this. Now this is actually just going to give me the entire material list of everything I've used, and it's even tried to categorize it for us to keep it nice and organized. And then we actually have our multiple different sets of quantities, even with our unit rates of measure and with all of the various different product codes. So there is multiple different reports in here that you can use for all types of internal processes. Just do not send any of these ones to the client. These are not designed to be sent over to them. These, like I said, are for internal use. The documentation for the client is more on the last stage, the bill setup. So we're going to press continue and push forward to that, where we'll actually have the ability to generate quite a few couple of things. So the first things are the ones on the left hand side, your summaries, either section, tender or the totals. Now one of these 3 is going to be your most suitable just for showing the total cost of the section structure, which we've created earlier. I'm going to show you my personal preference one, which is the tender summary. And I'm also going to generate a standard schedule of rates. You might not necessarily want that or need to send that out at this moment in time, but I'm just going to show you it so you know that you can always come back here and get this information at any given point. You do also have the ability to have some preset documentation, which we can actually set up in the back end of the software. So at this stage you could actually just load it up, and this would effectively be the draft version. and you can make any adjustments to it just for this quotation and actually generate it using all the same theme and format in which the actual quotation is going to come out with as well. So do speak with us if you would like to actually get these set up. So just to show you what these look like, I just press my preview and export button. The first one is going to be the tender summary. So this one is actually giving us the ground floor, the LTHW, the breakdown, the quantity of that section structure as seen by the multiplier earlier, and then the total. And then you can see the same for the CWS, the subtotal of the ground floor, the AC work that needs to be carried out as well, and then the total cost of all of that together. So obviously this is the ideal document whether you actually want to send our documentation, which by the way we can get your letterhead put up here as well just to make this a bit more personal for you. Or if you'd actually like to just export this straight out into an Excel document or a Word so you can make any of your own adjustments, that's completely fine as well. Simply just select which file format it is that you would like, press your export report, and just like what we've been covering over on the PDF takeoff side of things of how to save our drawings and how to actually get them back onto our local computer, this is going to come up into your reports folder and then into the name of the job. Simply just press your save button, and that's going to open up the cloud storage automatically for you, so you can simply just copy and paste this back to your own desktop. Just like so, and then I'm able to open this up and then view it through all of the Word process, Excel or PDF, whatever it might be. And then just so we've been through it, here is the final schedule of rates that can always be automatically generated, and we can show this with a labour material split. We can show this broken up within the section structures or without the section structures. It is completely up to you. Once again, you can export this out into the same PDF, Word or Excel to make any personal adjustments in which you'd like. But other than that, that would effectively be how you actually go through and use the system to construct your first quotation. And this is ready to be sent over, and hopefully you win the quotation. If you would like any more assistance with any of these types of things, please, I'll just reiterate it again, just go to your support button and get in contact through your preferred method. Okay, thank you.